The town of Havenbrook had always been small enough that everyone knew each other's names, but large enough that you could still disappear if you wanted to. For Daniel Mercer, disappearing was exactly what he wanted. At 37, he lived alone in a modest farmhouse inherited from his late father, sitting on the edge of Havenbrook's woods. Daniel worked as a surveyor for the county, spending long days mapping the old farmlands and forest trails. He liked the solitude, being outside with nothing but his tools, the wind, and the hush of the trees. He wasn't a man people worried much about. Quiet, polite, dependable. But Daniel had a weight inside him he never shared, a past mistake that gnawed at him at night when the world went still. His younger brother, Michael, had died in a hiking accident 15 years ago. Daniel had been with him that night. He had been the one who insisted they push further into the canyon despite the warning signs of an incoming storm. And when the rain came, the ground gave way, and Michael was swallowed by earth and water. Daniel crawled out alive. The guilt was like a second shadow, one he could never outrun. Havenbrook, though, gave him routine, and routine gave him a sense of fragile peace. Morning coffee on the porch, a walk through the woods, a night alone with his old record player and a glass of bourbon. But lately, things had been different. It started small, the ground beneath his boots feeling softer than it should, like sponge instead of dirt, his tools giving odd readings, compasses spinning, GPS signals fading, the creak of his farmhouse floors at night, as though someone else was pacing when he sat frozen in bed. One morning, while on a survey near the old quarry, Daniel found something strange. A thin, black crack in the ground, no wider than his hand but stretching further than his eyes could follow. It pulsed faintly, like the beat of a heart. When he crouched close, the air above it shimmered with heat though the day was cool. He felt an urge to reach out, to press his fingers inside, but stopped himself. Instead, he stumbled back, shaking his head. That night, as he tried to sleep, the creaking of his house grew louder. He swore he heard whispering, not words exactly, but a vibration rising from the floorboards. And then came the dream. He stood in the middle of Havenbrook. The streets were empty. The sky above was a deep, bruised red. Cracks ran through the pavement, splitting wider with every breath. From the fissures, arms reached out, long, skeletal, covered in soil. They clawed at the air, reaching for him. When he woke, heart hammering, he realized something unsettling. The crack in his dream had been in the exact same place he saw near the quarry, and it was getting bigger. Daniel tried to ignore it. For days, he buried himself in work, taking jobs farther from the quarry. But Havenbrook was changing. Birds stopped singing in the woods. Squirrels, deer, and even stray dogs seemed to vanish. People in town whispered about livestock going missing. Sheep found half buried in fields, their bodies twisted in impossible shapes. At night, Havenbrook felt wrong. The sky seemed darker, the stars dimmer, and the ground never stopped moving. Tiny tremors rattled Daniel's dishes, shook his windows. One evening, Daniel visited Claire Holloway, an old friend who taught science at the local high school. Over coffee, he described the strange crack he'd found. "You mean a fissure?" she asked, adjusting her glasses. "No, it's different. It's not just a split in the ground. It's alive." Claire frowned. "Alive?" Daniel hesitated. "It beats. Like a heart." She laughed nervously, then stopped when she saw his face. "You're serious?" "I've seen cracks before, Claire. This isn't natural." Claire promised to come out and take a look with her geology equipment. But before she could, Daniel received a call 2 nights later. Claire's voice shook. "Daniel, I think I saw it." "Saw what?" he asked. "The ground near my house, it opened up. Just for a second. I swear something looked back at me." The line went dead. When Daniel drove to her house, she was gone. Her car was still in the driveway. The front door was open. Inside, he found her living room torn apart, claw marks gouged into the walls. And on the floor, pressed into the wood, was the same black crack. It hadn't been there hours earlier. Daniel backed away, trembling. As he reached the porch, the boards beneath his feet groaned. Something whispered again, this time clear enough to make him sick. "Come closer." He ran. The next morning, Havenbrook awoke to news of Claire's disappearance. No one had answers. Police searched the woods, the quarry, the roads. Nothing. But Daniel knew. The earth was opening. And it was hungry. The cracks spread faster. Within days, Havenbrook was a patchwork of broken earth, black lines webbing across streets, fields, and backyards. The ground trembled constantly now, sometimes so violently that windows shattered in their frames. People began fleeing town. Those who stayed spoke of voices rising from the soil, of shadows moving beneath the ground. Children had nightmares of the things underground, pulling them into the dirt. Daniel could feel it too. The guilt in his chest, the ghost of his brother, felt tied to this disaster. At night, Michael's voice whispered through the walls. "You left me, and now it's your turn." One evening, Daniel returned to the quarry, drawn by something he couldn't resist. The fissure was massive now, wide enough to swallow a car. Steam rose from its depths, carrying the stench of rot. And then he saw them. Figures crawling from the crack. Pale, mud-covered bodies, eyes empty but mouths stretched wide in silent screams. Their movements were jerky, wrong, like marionettes pulled by unseen strings. One of them looked familiar. "Michael," Daniel whispered. The figure tilted its head. The face was ruined, half collapsed, but he recognized the eyes. "You left me." The thing croaked, its voice layered with dozens of others. Daniel fell to his knees. "I didn't mean to." The ground shook violently, and dozens more figures clawed their way out, surrounding him. He realized, with sick horror, that these weren't strangers. They were Havenbrook's missing people. Claire was among them, her eyes empty, her face streaked with black soil. "Join us," she whispered. The earth cracked wider, opening into a chasm that seemed endless. And Daniel understood. This wasn't a natural disaster. The earth wasn't breaking. It was opening. The night Havenbrook fell was never recorded in official history. To the outside world, it was just another earthquake, a tragedy in a small forgotten town. But to those who lived through it, the truth was undeniable. The ground split wide. Houses collapsed. Streets caved in. And from beneath the soil came the things that had been waiting all along. Daniel fought to survive, running through the chaos as the earth swallowed everything. But he couldn't escape. At the edge of the quarry, where it all began, Michael's figure appeared again. "Do you understand now?" his brother asked, voice echoing from every direction. Daniel stared into the abyss, realization sinking like a knife. This wasn't about Havenbrook. It wasn't even about the earth. It was about him. The guilt he had carried, the secret he had buried, somehow. It had poisoned the ground beneath his feet. And now it demanded payment. He felt hands clutch his ankles, pulling him down. He didn't resist. For the first time in 15 years, he let go. The earth closed over him. Days later, when rescue teams arrived, they found nothing. Havenbrook was gone, swallowed whole. No bodies, no survivors. Just endless cracks stretching toward the horizon, pulsing faintly like veins. Some say you can still hear whispers if you stand near the quarry. A voice calling from beneath the soil, waiting for someone to answer. "Come closer,"